So then I want to welcome everyone to this Sunday meeting, and we are so glad that you're with us again, Alex. Alex is faithful, is coming once a month, so we are very happy for that. And for those of you who have not heard about Alex before, he has his own YouTube channel called Spirit of Remnant. And last time you were with us, you were having an interesting program called The Four Faces of the Throne. And today the topic is the antitypical midnight cry. So the time is yours.
Thank you. Well, I don't know how interesting it was last time. I think the whole conversation about the four beasts around the throne and seeing them as cognitive architectures, and I think it gets too philosophical for most people, which I completely understand, and that is why I've decided today to make it a very Seventh-day Adventist friendly show. Well, actually, it's not going to be friendly. It's going to be very provocative, but nevertheless, it's going to be something you will have the grammar to it will resonate better because it's not going to be all this lofty talks about philosophy and all of that. But it actually came out of studying. Well, I was writing my book about the four faces of the throne, which ended up being quite long. It ended up being, with a normal font, about 700 pages. And out of that book came many new conclusions about all kinds of things, actually. And one of the big epiphanies that I've had, and I actually had this idea many years ago when I was studying. I just had different Bible studies, and this idea kept coming back to me. And of course, that's the signature of the Holy Spirit. When something keeps telling you go in that direction, there's something to it, especially when it comes up in Bible studies done under prayer. I mean, that those are good ingredients for receiving messages from heaven.
Amen.
And but I think the message will be extremely provocative for most Adventists to hear, unfortunately. And I guess that is just the capacity that I'm always occupying. I'm the unfriendly troubler of Israel. Uh, well, anti-typical Israel, I guess. So, what is the message? The message is the midnight cry. What is the midnight cry? Every single well-read Adventist should know that the midnight cry was a failed prophecy. So I guess that's where the provocation starts, right? Because I call it a failed prophecy, not because I necessarily uh, question the pioneers and even Ellen White, who prophetically spoke about the midnight cry as an event that God ordained, but more simply, just on a very superficial level, we can conclude that the midnight cry failed because there was a cry, right? A people was gathered. There was a gathering time in the 1840s, correct?
Mm.
And in the US, you had a preacher named William Miller. I think I don't need to give the background history, I think, for this, right? I mean, people were expecting Christ to come in the 1840s, and more specifically, they were hoping that he would come in the middle of 1844, and Christ did not return. And then something happened. There was a huge camp meeting and thousands of Millerites, meaning people who believed William Miller, a preacher who proclaimed that the 2,300 days of Daniel 8 were finishing in 1844, and he interpreted the cleansing of the sanctuary in Daniel 8 to mean that that the end of the world would commence with the return of Christ. And that, of course, didn't happen. And in that camp meeting, a writer came in writing with a message that their arithmetic was not completely on point. They miscalculated the date, and they postponed the date for the 22nd of October 1844. Can I have a show of hands how many people, or maybe just write in the chat a yes if you are very familiar with Seventh-day Adventist history, and a no if all of these things are not completely like on your backbone. Like, how familiar are people with this history? Because I don't want to assume too much, because I'm not here I'm not here to give a lecture on Adventist history, although it's very interesting. I wanna take the study much further than that. But if the if the history is not reflected, if the history is not, used as an anchor, the antitypical application, or rather fulfillment of the application, will make even less sense. Okay, it sounds like people know the history. Great. So I'm going to skip all the explaining, and I'm just going to get right to it then. So
Maybe you can start with a prayer.
that's a good idea. Dear Heavenly Father, we ask that you will guide us in this study, and that you may open our hearts to the many new truths that you have for your movement, so that they can be prepared for what's coming, hopefully in our generation. We ask that in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
So the writer came into the camp meeting, and it was a very big deal, even though the even though when the 22nd of October came around and nothing happened, the the prophetess, she never forfeited her position about the midnight cry. She said the midnight cry, meaning the correction of the understanding of the arithmetic of the time prophecy, was a necessary mistake and a necessary course correction in order for God to really have a movement that's ready for the third angel's message, and what they thought would be the loud cry. Of course, none of that happened. We live in a time where none of that happened. And many of the prophecies, like I say again and again and again and again, I become increasingly more unpopular the more I stand by what I'm teaching, that most of these prophecies that we should know by heart from Revelation, and even some from Daniel, are not yet fulfilled. And now you can add one more to that huge collection, which is the Midnight Cry. It hasn't happened. So how can we know that for sure? Well, on the most superficial level, we can know this prophecy is still in the future. Well, because Matthew 25, which is about the bridegroom who comes back. Let's actually read that. Shall we read it? Let's read it. Matthew 25. Let's just take the King James version for this. There we go. Okay. Then shall the kingdom of heaven be likened unto 10 virgins, which took their lamps and went forth to meet the bridegroom. Who's the bridegroom? That's the one who's to be married to the virgin church. That's Jesus Christ, when he's done interceding as our high priest. The 5 of them were wise, and 5 were foolish. They that were foolish took their lamps and took no oil with them, but the wise took oil in their vessels with their lamps. While the bridegroom tarried, they all slumbered and slept. And at midnight there was a cry made, Behold, the bridegroom cometh, go ye out to meet him. Then all those virgins arose and trimmed their lamps, and the foolish said unto the wise, Give us your oil, for our lamps are gone out. But the wise answered, saying, Not so, lest there be not enough for us and you. But go ye rather to them that sell, and buy for yourselves. And while they went to buy, the bridegroom came, and they that were ready went in with him to the marriage, and the door was shut. Afterward came also the other virgins, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered and said, Verily I say unto you, I know you not. Watch therefore, for ye know neither the day nor the hour wherein the Son of Man cometh. Okay, so why is this important? And how can we know this is still future? Well, it doesn't take a genius to see that this is a prophecy about the second coming. And if the prophecy, if the culmination of the prophecy is the return of Christ, then of course Matthew 25 is still in the future. I mean, it's as simple as that on a superficial level. But underneath that level, you have many other clues that a keen Bible student will see. There are many clues to why Matthew 25 is connected with other prophecies, and those prophecies are still future as well if you know how to order prophecies. So there is this great misconception that we are not to know the day and the hour of Christ's return. And it's a misconception only partly because it says there in Matthew 25 that no man will know the day or the hour, and it's repeated other places, correct? But the real interpretation of that verse is that it's not about knowing the day or the hour. It's actually about having the authority to make known the day and the hour of Christ's return. Okay, so that's a mistranslation of the Bible, right? One of the places where it's mentioned that nobody will know the day and the hour, it says not even the Son knows the day and the hour. And I don't know if any of you have ever listened to a debate between a Trinitarian and a Unitarian, but what often comes up as an argument for the Unitarian position is that the Son cannot be God because being God means that you have intrinsic omniscience, and if you are omniscient, then there will be nothing that you don't know. And it says that the Son doesn't know the day and the hour, right? So you can put that argument on its head now and say, okay, well, as Bible believing Christians, we know that Jesus is God. He's not the one true God. He's not the Ancient of Days. He's not the he's he is a God, as in he has divine nature. So he has inherited his divinity, his godhood. So he is omniscient. And since he's omniscient, that must mean that he knows everything. So how can Jesus not know the day and the hour? Well, of course he does. Of course he knows the day of the hour of his return. It's his return. So, and James White did a beautiful Bible study on this verse a long time ago, where he says that the original languages, actually the Greek translates actually more accurately to maketh known the day and the hour, which is very important for us. Why is it important? Well, because one of the very first visions that Ellen White received was about the making known of the day and the hour of Christ's return. Put your hand up in the air, or write in the comment section if you knew that. Did you know that she, one of her very first visions was about her seeing how there's a blessing pronounced by the Father upon a people who are walking on the straight path towards New Jerusalem, and they're being blessed by the Father. And a part of that blessing is hearing his voice, where the rest of the world hear his voice as thunder. And not only that, they are then the Father shows to the whole universe that he's the one true God by making known the day and the hour of Christ's return. Hold on, I gotta shut off my alarm. So let's, and also I'll be releasing a video on my YouTube channel about this. So if all of these steps and calculations in the long string of chain of thought make no sense, you can just rewatch the video. It's gonna be dramatized a bit with dramatic music and me being very theatrical, but nevertheless the information is sound. So think with me here. If one of the very first visions Ellen White receives is about God the Father being the only one with the authority to make known the day and the hour of Christ's return, and Christ's return being still in the future, and then if you concatenate all of the quotes that she has about the midnight cry being a true prophecy from God that's applicable, and it functions, it has a certain function. It's supposed to do something. No, having that information and being able to apply that information. Well, what do you do when you just like, what do you do when 2 plus 2, what does that equal, right? You have you have all of that information about the midnight cry. You know Christ has returned. You're now corrected in your understanding of what it means to know the day and the hour. It's being made known by the Father only. And not only that, we have all of this contextual information from her vision, where she tells us she was shown how the midnight cry will be what galvanizes the movement, and the midnight cry is the true witness to the Laodicean church. That's incredible. That's incredible. That's an incredible piece of information. We need to put it in the right sequence of events, and we need to understand, okay, in the big scheme of things, what do you do with that kind of information? But that in of itself reproves so much error if you can deeply study this subject, because nowhere in end time in end time prophecy, nowhere in the eschatological panoramic view that we should have in front of us by studying these prophecies, do we have a blessing pronounced on God's people but one place, which is in Daniel chapter 12, my favorite obsession of all. So that's your first rebuke, because if you put Daniel 12 in the past, you're going to miss the blessing. And if you're going to miss the blessing, which is the same as hearing the Father's voice, making known the day and the hour, which Ellen White receives the first, think about it, the first vision she gets after the great disappointment is about the blessing that will be pronounced on the people who are galvanized, who are made into a movement that is completely of one mind, in unison. Remember in early writings, by the way, read early writings once every 3 months. That's my recommendation. It's just I'm rereading it with my wife right now for the 10th time, I think. And it's just every single time you will just get a golden nugget all the time. It's an incredible book. Anyway, so we should really be able to interpret the our Heavenly Father's intention with what he did. Imagine being a Seventh-day Adventist. You're not even a Seventh-day Adventist. You haven't even received the title yet. You haven't been honored with it. You just went through the great disappointment. You have no idea why you had to be wrong again and again and again. What? I thought we were wrong for the last time during that camp meeting. And then the writer came in, and that was the midnight cry. And then we knew we were right. Now the math just completely checked out. It's this 22nd of October. We can't be wrong about this now, right? So just sell your houses, whatever pension funds you have left, just put it into the movement. We need it. We need professional videographers to spread the message. We need professional, we need to start having a war chest. We need a treasury to fund the war. We need to take this war seriously. We need to be a unit, a military, right? That's the mentality that they had after the midnight cry, because now they knew. They didn't guess, they knew. And yet they were wrong. Christ didn't return in October 22nd. And what is the response from heaven to that? She gets a vision about the posterity of that movement walking on a narrow road, receiving a blessing where the Father pronounces the day and the hour of Christ's return. Because if they don't, if they don't know what to do with if they are not living through life in anticipation of the agony that they're going through. And why are they going through agony? Well, the chapter says right after the third chapter, the sealing, you're told everything about the persecution and the death decree and all of that. So of course they are in agony, right? So this friend is getting a bit chaotic. So let me just restructure it. If you look at history, the history of Adventism, half a year before October 22nd, 1844, there was a God organized an event. And the purpose, the function of that event was to wake the movement up and get them ready and make them commit their personal finances, their full attention, truly atone for their sins. Actually, she writes somewhere, I can't remember where, but she writes that one of the holiest generations of all of humanity in the last 6,000 years was the generation that anticipated the cleansing of the sanctuary during October of 1844, because they really went through an atonement phase equal to none, because they were sure that the math checked out. So in other words, arithmetic, or being able to apply the counting of days in somehow, right? Being able to anticipate a date is not only helpful, but it's necessary. You need that anticipation. You need that assurance. Does that make any sense? To say that there is no more prophetic time after 1844, and to scream that at me every single time I'm trying to teach you that there's a difference between a prophecy being applied historically and fulfilled antitypically, it's just you're missing spiritual fruits here. If that's all you are left with, that there is no prophetic time after 1844. Prophetic time is such a vague term that if you take every single quote from Ellen White about there is no more time, you're left with 3 different answers, and you have to reconcile that somehow. So let me just give you my notes from my studies, which will ease the confusion. No, there is no more prophetic time after 1844. If prophetic time is exclusively applicable to the context of those quotes that she makes about prophetic time, and all of the context that you can find, every single one of them, is about 1844, the 2,300 days of Daniel 8. It says nothing about Daniel 12. Actually, if you want a direct quote from Ellen White about Daniel 12, she says the last generation will have to completely understand Daniel 12 in order to be spiritually equipped for what's coming for them. And not only that, I've found in selected messages a quote where she says that the end time revival that leads to the shaking is a prophecy from the ending of the book of Daniel. That's almost verbatim. So how can you put that all in the past? It's impossible. Besides, in early writings, at the ending of the book, I remember from reading it the last time, she says that the shaking of the church is commenced by the true witness to the Laodicean church. What is the true witness to the Laodicean church? Well, we have to speculate, don't we? But we can have a very educated guess if you triangulate the message from the context of Matthew 25, the midnight cry, from the making known the day and the hour of Christ's return, which is the blessing pronounced on the people waiting for the second coming, which is the last verse of Daniel 12, the 1335 days. That's a time prophecy, by the way. And then the last piece of the puzzle you would really need for that is to be able to put it in the larger timeline. And the best way to construct the grand, timeline, a bigger narrative than the 1335 days, is to take the 7 thunders that Melody taught me about. The 7 thunders of Revelation is that's the cheat sheet. The 7 thunders of Revelation gives you from start to finish what we are to live through as the last generation of Adventists. it is not a it is not a coincidence that the first thunder starts in 1844 and the seventh thunder is the marriage between the bridegroom and the virgin. That's the A and that's the Z, I guess, like Alex Zdyb. Okay, let me close my window. I don't need to convert my neighbor just yet. So it all goes back to my favorite chapter in the Bible, which is chapter 12 of Daniel. And I dedicate numerous chapters in my book where I show how the chaistic structure of Daniel 12 corresponds actually to the seven thunders. What does that mean? It means that the seven thunders run chronologically, but Daniel chapter 12 gives you a more detailed description of why the appointed time, the moed, is dedicated to these 42 months plus whatever days goes after that for the plagues and all of that. So if we don't recognize that, sure, there are no more prophetic time after 1844, but the time prophecies in Daniel 12 are not only helpful, they are a requirement for understanding Matthew 25. If you don't understand the blessing of the 1335 days, you will not understand how we are to anticipate the making known of the day and the hour of Christ's return. So that's I would say that's one of the main ingredients you need in that concoction, that you will have to know basically that there is a starting gun for it all. And why is that necessary? Why do we need a time prophecy? Is it just to be date setters because we have to be sensational? We just have to, oh, it's going on now, right? I mean, we just have to be sensationalist, alarmist. Is that the idea? Is God just somebody who needs us with that kind of energy, or is there a point to it? Is there does it serve a purpose to be able to do arithmetic, to do math and know, okay, so we have this amount of days to go through hell, to go through the worst persecution ever. And not only that, it's also a test for the church. So how many of you have heard before that the quote where Ellen White writes that there will never be a test based on time anymore? Has anybody heard that before? So am I contradicting Ellen White? No. No, if you put the quotes, like I said, if you put the quotes and the Bible verses in the right context, in the right sequence, it's actually amplifying the rest of the message. It enhances the message. Why? Because the world doesn't need time prophecies. They didn't have 5 generations of Adventist life where they could study early writings and selected messages, and they ate the book of Daniel, and it was sweet as honey, and then they turned bitter, right? By the way, I don't know about your God, but my God will never let me be bitter for the rest of my life, right? The experience that we will have will be a diametrically opposed experience to the great disappointment of 1844. We will hear the creator of the universe's personal voice when he maketh known the day and the hour, right? It's gonna be, she writes in early writings that when that happens, the energy of that proclamation, of that blessing, will make our faces shine like the face of Moses when he came down from the mountain of Sinai. And the men that will try to kill us during the death decree will fear us because of the resonance, the light that will shine from our faces. That's how big of a deal the proclamation, the blessing of the 1335 days is. And you're going to miss that if you're saying that that time message started in 508. The you know the total the not you know a complete nothing burger of a historic date, 508. You've heard me say this a million times before. Nothing happened in 508. um King Clovis, the king of the Franks, was made the anyway, I'm not going to repeat what I've said 1,000 times already. The entire point is to truly understand that there is no blessing for those who don't anticipate the blessing, and there is no shaking of the church if a time prophecy is not proclaimed for the world. So if you're afraid of time prophecies, I guess just leave it for those who will be accused of being fanatics. And by the way, nobody was more, had a worse experience when it comes to being accused of being a fanatic than those who, during that camp meeting and afterwards, said, you know what, we might have been wrong, but if you actually do the math now, it is the 22nd of October, 1844. I mean, do the actual calculation. There is no year zero, right? And those people were called the worst fanatics of all. And I guess we'll have to go through their experience now in our lifetime, because 2027 is when the count starts. So why 2027? Well, that's easy enough. That conversation is already all of that conversation is already echoing throughout the chambers of the Adventist Church, isn't it? Right? So why 2027? Can we all do the arithmetic by heart? It's actually easy enough once you know the starting date, right? The most important date in all of prophecy for a Seventh-day Adventist is 457 BC. Without 457 BC, we have nothing. There is no time prophecy. There is nothing without 457, right? Because you need to anchor the Daniel 8. You need a starting gun for that one, for the prophecy where there is prophetic time, right? The one that stops after 1844, where there is no prophetic time. You see, I'm traumatized the way people have been screaming at me. There is no prophetic time after 1844. So excuse my passion, but it's been hard to talk about this, So 457 BC, you just add 490 to that. Easy enough, right? That's your 70 weeks from Daniel 9. And then in the midst of that week, the 70th week, right? So you subtract from the 490, you subtract 3.5. That's when Christ died on the cross. That's 31 AD. And then you assume, correctly so, that the Great Week doctrine that all the pioneers and Ellen White and all of the whole movement believed in is true, that the solving of the sin crisis, the entire resolution of Adam and Eve passing the dominion to Satan, the dominion, all of dominion, how humanity is subjugated under the rule of the satanic hierarchy that is to be resolved after 6 days, and then after, and the seventh day is, of course, the rest day. And then you take the 3rd chapter of 2nd Peter and say that a day for the Lord is like 1,000 years for us. So you add 2000 to 31 and you end up in 2031, and then you subtract the time prophecies of Daniel 12 from that, and you end up at 2027. So let's just do the math again. You start at 457 BC, you add 490, right? Then you subtract 3.5 because 490 ends when Stephen was stoned. And then in the midst of that week, Christ was crucified, and and there are many reasons to believe that Jesus died exactly at the fourth millennia, exactly when 4,000 years passed since Adam sinned. And to know that, you need to read the right quotes from Ellen White. You need to read the articles of the pioneers. Andrews wrote a beautiful article on the Great Week. Osher is a good monk. He did many studies on how to calculate the dates as well. And not only that, you can just assume that that the 4,000 mark was about that time, because you can just add up the jubilees as well. That's a whole different math you can do. You just add up all the jubilees that you can count from the Bible, and you end up the same date. And by the way, Satan's calendar ends between 2029 and 2032, by the way, because Satan has a calendar as well. I don't know how many of you know this, but there is an organization that spans all over the world. They're called Lucius Trust, Lucius Publishing Company, and Lucius stands for Lucifer. They're used to be called Lucifer, Lucifer's Publishing Company, and they communicate with spirits all the time, and they update their calendar every single year at the different witch holidays and stuff like that. And they're told that their world teacher will arrive in that span of 3 years, from 2029 to 2032. And they were told this for the first time at the beginning of World War One. So this is nothing new for them. They've been updating that, their curriculum and all of that for a long time. Yeah. For more information about that, just Google or go on YouTube and say, who did a very good study on this? The Matthew Sanchez guy. He used to do amazing discoveries with McKinsey. You guys know who I'm talking about? He's like a dark-haired fellow, fairly young, I think my age. He's not running amazing discoveries with McKinsey anymore, but he's now got his own channel, Matthew Sanchez or something like that. Well, he's done a great episode, like a whole 2-hour where he breaks it all down with the Lucifer's Publishing Company and how they have a calendar as well, and they're anticipating the return of their Christ figure. They call him the Christ, or the Master Jesus. He's an ascended master and stuff like that. Anyway, so in summary, if you don't thank you, Amelia, wifey. If you don't have the starting gun, which is in 2027, you're not gonna you're not gonna anticipate the blessing of the 1335. And apparently, it's a big deal. I myself did not understand for many years why it's such a big deal. Like, can't you just arrive at the blessing and then you will hear the voice of God and then everything is fine? No, apparently not so. Because if you read the things she writes about the midnight cry, and you have to do that in mind that that was the application, the historical application, and the details of the historical application will be magnified and scaled up for the antitypical fulfillment, right? That's how prophecy works. God shows you an example. It's almost like in the corporate world, it would be called like a proof of concept, right? So, for example, let me give you a perfect example of this. And this is going to be controversial, even for you, Melody, I think. Um, for example, Daniel 11. I was divided about Daniel 11 until I wrote the book and everything fell into place. If you're stringent about if you're strict about applying the application and fulfillment pattern hermeneutic to prophecy, then Daniel 11 stops being so complicated. Everything, every prophecy that seems to be a bit complicated, it's probably because you're supposed to look at that prophecy from two completely different angles. One from looking from the past to the future, and the other from the past, from the future to the past, right? So, for example, verse the verse in Daniel 11, one of the last verses, I think it's verse 40, 41, 42, 43, 44. Those verses describe a triangular war where you have the king of the north, king of the south, and a he, a pronoun there, where they are battling each other and stuff like that. And a great a Seventh-day Bible scholar, prophecy scholar, will say, well, that's easy enough. This is about Napoleon Bonaparte and his war in Egypt and how he fought the Turks and how they what lands they passed through and all of that. And you will be partly right. Yes, it's true. Napoleon is a prophetic figure. And what he did in Egypt and how he fought the Turks is all prophetic. But all of that is just a proof of concept, is just an application, historical application. You will need a different figure for the he and for the king of the north and for the king of the south in the antitypical fulfillment of that prophecy. Just like you need a different movement to receive a new time message, to go through a new midnight cry where we will sell our houses and we will sell our third and second car and whatever we have stored of financial means, so we can pour our money in to what really matters, which is to make the 2027 movement go worldwide and to shake out all the lukewarm Adventists out of our movement. And not only that, those who are not lukewarm, those who are actually, passionate, they just disagree, well, they will have to make up their mind, I guess. A huge test is coming for them in 2027. And I'm being very direct because, I mean, what are we doing here? I mean, are we going to continue to play Adventist for decades? No, there's going to be a shaking, right? And I don't think you have anything to fear if you're truly, if you're truly awake, then you're not lukewarm, and nobody's going to spit you out of his mouth. But I think 2027 will be a very difficult time for our movement, and especially the Godhead movement, because the third argument that I make in the episode that will be out very, very soon about this anti-typical midnight cry is that the war started with the great controversy on the deepest level at its core is about the sonship of Christ. It's about who Christ is, not just relationally to the Father, right? Because let's take Walter Fight as an example, right? I have never heard him pray wrong. He always prays to the Almighty, and he always prays in Jesus' name. I think his prayer is accepted by the Lord, and there's a high priest receiving his incense in the most holy place. But he has to make up his mind about the one true God, right? And and but he has accepted the truth about 2027. Like the spirit of prophecy in him, the spirit of Christ, the spirit of truth, the spirit of Emmet, is convincing him to his core that 2027 is a prophetic starting gun, right? So he's proclaiming that every now and then on his channel, Clash of Minds, and it just resonates, right, with truth seekers. It resonates, but he accepts the Trinity doctrine. And now do the inverse. You have a one true God believer, like, I'm only naming public figures here, so it's not um, take somebody like David Vans now. David
David David Barron.
David Barron. Thank you for reading my mind. Now get out of my head. No, David Barron, such a good preacher, right? Such a powerful preacher, and I love him. I love my brother David, but he is just fighting this 2027 with tooth and nail, right? No, there is no prophetic. He's the one screaming at me, right? And at Walter and at David Gates. There is no 2027. There is no prophetic time because Daniel 12 is in the past. I mean, surely the spirit of prophecy animates him. Just he'll have to make up his mind. And all of this, all of our entire movement will be shaken during next year. And things will happen in the world that will let us know that not this is the starting gun. To me, I've already had that moment last month ago. I am settled in the truth now. When I read the encyclical of Leo the 14th on artificial intelligence, Magnifica Humanitas, when I read that encyclical, it just clicked. It just, of course it's gonna be done that way, right? That's a different topic, and maybe I should do like a lecture on AI, especially as that's my background, right? I've been working with artificial intelligence professionally, but not that it even matters that you understand AI. It's just the whole world is about to be changed through technology, and the best experts in the world anticipate artificial general intelligence, meaning robots will be smarter than humans in every single way in 2029. And we need to anticipate that inflection point by being able to control the machines, the thinking machines. And there is no way of doing that unless we have one authority in the world being able to, be the top guy. And we will submit the power and authority to reform, remodel society according to his will, so that AI will be integrated and aligned positively with humanity and not negatively, so we don't have like a Terminator situation. And it's a brilliant argument. I mean, everybody's going to go for that. My atheist brothers who work both in robotics and artificial intelligence, they're going to go for it. My oldest brother who researches artificial intelligence, his biggest concern with humanity is that we will not be able to have a positive alignment with artificial intelligence. And now the Vatican, the seat of the dragon, has an official document giving us the antidote to thinking machines taking over the world, which is that we need to go back to the time of the Middle Ages, where the Pope is the king of the world, and where he applies the social teachings of the Catholic Church to reform and reshape society so that we can have our dignity as human beings in our work life, in our family life, and in our spiritual lives each Sunday, where the Sunday law will be proclaimed. So it's all coming together now, and we don't even have a year. It's very exciting. I think, and this is, I'm just speculating here, but if all of that goes down in 2027, and we know from the historical application of the Midnight Cry that happened 6 months before 1844, October 1844, then I think in God's mercy, he will give us the same time period, 6 months, to have one mind and be that military that is described in early writings, where we move as one company. We have one mind. We are all commanded by Michael, our military commander. And once we are ready for that, then and only then will we receive the latter rain. We always assume that the end times will just be like, well, one day there's going to be a Sunday law, and then, well, God will have to do something about that, right? So we'll have to receive the latter rain so that we can give the loud cry with the power of the fourth angel of Revelation 18, so that people can get out of Babylon, then Christ can return. But that's the wrong sequence. That's not the sequence we are given historically. The correct sequence is that it all starts with, well, actually it starts with the second seal. But again, we're not even minding the seals, because again, those prophecies are put in the past. That's a problem. But yeah, so the next thing that happens in this world, in the controversy between good and evil, between Christ and Satan, is the White Rider will be summoned in the investigative judgment in the courtrooms of heaven, and the evidence of our allegiance will be brought forth in the investigative judgment. And then those who hear the shepherd's voice and anticipate the blessing in the 1335, after 1335 days, they will have the oil in their lamps to be able to point correctly on 2027 and say, that's our midnight cry. And once the movement is once again galvanized, or to use Ellen White's very specific language, we receive the impetus necessary for a revival, so that the loud cry can even happen, so that we have the ingredients to even bake that cake and then eat that cake. We will need the prophecies of Daniel for that, Daniel 12, and the 7 seals and the 7 trumpets, But yeah, the 7 trumpets, that's pretty late game, if you ask me. I mean, we will already have a movement like we did in the 1840s, just now scaled up to the world size. Okay, so how am I doing on time? That's an hour, right? It's funny how that always.
It goes fast, right?
We have a lot of time until 2027, so just keep calm and carry on.
Well, thank you, Melody. You've been a great teacher. I'll read all your comments. Maybe I'll do that now. That's going to be a great spark for a good conversation. Okay, so Melody wrote, I agree the midnight cry will be repeated, and I believe the 144,000, as soon as they are picked, all sound the midnight cry. Yes. The midnight cry precedes the latter rain. So I have identified, and I believe so correctly, I haven't heard anybody propose something that is just that can be integrated structurally as easily as the correct interpretation of the antitypical midnight cry to the whole prophetic scene. I've only heard once what the true witness to the Laodicean church can even be, and that is that there will be a new prophet coming and having visions, and then that person will unite the one true God movement. And that's a whole other conversation, but this is very important to emphasize, there is no latter rain without the midnight cry first, just as there was no Adventism, there was no Seventh-day Adventism without the Great Disappointment, and there was no Great Disappointment without setting that date, the 22nd of 1844, October 1844. And that happened during that summer, during that camp meeting, which is the historical midnight cry. The 144,000 will not be well received by the SDA church and by the world when they make this announcement. Well, that's not even a controversial statement. It's just, it will be impossible for the corporate church to receive any of these truths, right? I mean, if it's not one truth, right? It's your time setting of Daniel 12. Forget about it, right? Corporate church will crucify you, literally crucify you if they have to. If you're gonna proclaim that message. But we are not proclaiming one message. Like we have a multi-pronged message, don't we? We have the Daniel 12, and you can't mention Daniel 12 without mentioning the seven thunders, which gives you the whole revelation in a futurist interpretation. They will crucify you for that as well. Seriously, they will dislike you and throw you out. I mean, wasn't there a preacher, the Mr. Moore, who wrote a book on trumpets being future, and he was even like a president of a union or something, and they fired him. And he was probably way nicer than I am. I'm a troublemaker, right? He was probably a nice person. So they will have to accept the Daniel 12 time setting. They will have to accept the seven thunders, because that's the same, that's the same diet. That's the same spirit of prophecy diet. And then they will have to accept the whole us versus them black and white mentality, right? Because some hear the thunder, Father's name is thunder, and some hear his pronouncement of the day and the hour as a blessing. That's a very black and white thinking. The corporate churches never go for that, right? I mean, they are a part of the sustainable goals of the United Nations, which is probably the best candidate actually for the 10 kings having one mind of Revelation 17. I mean, what corporate structure fits better than the United Nations for that? I don't know which one. So yeah, and of course, the third head of that prophetic snake, or, well, let's not call it a snake. Well, we should be wise as serpents, right? Is the truth about the Father and the Son, right? How is the corporate church going to react to that? That there is a fanatical Arian sub-movement within the church, and now their fanaticism knows no boundaries. Not only are they fanatic with their Arianism, now they're also fanatic about 2027, right? So can you just imagine how unpopular we will be once God will manifest his power through this message? And he will do it. I promise you that. You can quote me. If he won't, let's say we are in November of 2027 and nothing happened. I've thought that many, many times. What would actually happen if I'm wrong? What happens if Melody is wrong? Right? What if the fanatics are truly just fanatical and they're sensationalists and they're setting dates? Well, let me tell you, maybe it's even too dark to say this out loud, but no, I should. We are committed to the truth. Then there is nothing in this movement to anchor anything on. All of these quotes and all of these dates and all of this history and all of these types and antitypes and what have you are just floating hypotheses that makes us mad. There is no structure to it. We are all psychotic then. I refuse to believe that. I don't believe it. I have faith. So besides the supersymmetry of how all of that is lining up, I mean, if we had a supercomputer that could map out the statistical, the actual math behind how. Anyway, I'm just rambling, but if November 2027 is here and nothing has happened, there is no midnight cry, there is no the end times haven't begun, Daniel 12 hasn't begun, well, then there is nothing left in this movement, is there? Because that's all the substance of the entire inheritance that you have inherited from your fathers and mothers that I have been welcomed to, right? That's all you have. There is nothing left. There's the corporate church, right? They might as well just commit themselves to marrying the world. And then there are the conservative Adventists who are slowly waking up, right, and still clinging on to some false doctrines, but the good shepherd is working on their hearts. And then there's Melody, there is Earthen Vessels, there is Waltz of Five, there's David Gates, there are these ministries that God is using, and he's shaping us and he's forming us and he's making us ready so that we can get his children, the hostages of Babylon, get them out, right? Because they are the children of God, and they will go to heaven with us, and they will be a part of that journey on that narrow road to the New Jerusalem that Ellen White sees as her first vision after the Great Disappointment. I believe that. And if you don't believe that, realize if we are wrong, there is just nothing left in this movement. Seriously. There will be nothing left, because then the Great Week doctrine is false. Daniel 12 is not in the future. Then you might as well just say that the 42 months of Revelation 13 are not in the future. Like, just thinking all of this and making my mind try to synchronize all of these false assumptions and trying to harmonize them, the despair in that is just dark. It's dark, because you will have to conclude pretty terrible conclusions. Anyway, I have to de-escalate. According to the original language of the Bible, no man knows the day or the hour. It should be translated, no man will tell. Yeah, maketh known the day and the hour. Absolutely true. In other words, the Father will announce the day and the hour. If you don't believe what Melody and I are saying about this, all you need to do is read the first chapter in early writings, if you believe Ellen White was animated by the spirit of prophecy, and then pick up your Bible and locate the blessing in the eschatological narrative, right? Just locate the blessing. Where is the blessing pronounced? She's talking about a blessing where the day and the hour is made known. And she gives you enough detail about that situation, right? For you to be able to put the pieces of the puzzle together. It can only be the 1335 days of Daniel 12. You just have to discard 508, which is easy enough. And that is why they even did it during the historical movement. They removed 508 from the charts. Do people know that? They removed 508 from the charts, just like they removed 666 from the charts. You know that the first chart they made over the prophecies of Daniel and Revelation said that the pagan Rome ruled for 666 years, 666 years. And then probably an autistic person present, I imagine, I want to think so, just put his arm up and said, excuse me, but pagan Rome did not rule for 666 years. That's just not true. That's just our best historians. You know, the historians we quote in the Great Controversy, almost every single page in the Great Controversy, to such a degree that she's accused of plagiarizing historicists, right? So she's really faithful to the material. Those same historians are saying that pagan Rome did not rule for 666 years. So they removed the 666 from the charts, just like they removed 508 from the charts. So stop clinging to the Daniel 12 being in the past. Thank you. It's problematic if you do, because the blessing will not be pronounced on you, and I want you to receive the blessing. I want to be in the same company as you. Yes, in vision, God told her the day and the hour, and then after her vision ended, she could not remember the day and the hour, and she was told God was withholding this info from her, but God knew back then in her day what the day and the hour was. Yeah, and so did Jesus, and probably many of the angels. I wouldn't even be surprised if Satan knows, to be honest. He's probably smart enough to puzzle that, you know. I don't think God does anything completely randomly. No more prophetic time after 1844 means that there is no more day for a year. How does Melody know that? Well, because every single context of the quote that you are misquoting, by the way, where you're screaming at us that there's no prophetic time after 1844, is about people in the 1800s trying to move the date from the 22nd of October, 1844. I'm going to say that again. People were so disappointed in the great disappointment that they're like, no, wait, it's going to happen next year. No, wait, it's going to happen in 1870. No, wait, it's going to happen this and this and that. And she kept on saying, no, there is no more prophetic time. The 2,300 days, that's sealed, that's closed. Jesus is in the most holy place. That's the sanctuary is being cleansed. And by the way, it's not cleansed yet. The sanctuary hasn't been cleansed yet. It's being cleansed in the anti-typical Day of Atonement. We need to understand what the cleansing of the sanctuary means, by the way. It's actually a great mystery, what it means to cleanse it. I can give you a clue. There will be no sanctuary in heaven. There's not going to be a most holy place and a holy place in heaven. So they need to refurnish the place and get some walls down. They have a carpenter. So easily done. But first, the high priest needs to intercede on our behalf until there is a people that debunk the accusations of Satan in the great controversy, meaning that you might have a Job who lived a perfect life and did not curse God, even though everything was taken from him. But Satan's present accusation is you will never see that. You will never have a corporate Job. You will never have 144,000 of Jobs. And God says, "Oh really? Oh really? You wait and see." It does not mean that there are no more prophecies based on time. Of course not. I mean, even in the prophecies that the corporate church puts in the future, like in Revelation 17, there are time prophecies there. The 1,000 years, the millennia is a time prophecy, right? It's a prophecy about 1,000 years of peace. The war about Gog and Magog in Ezekiel 38, that's a time prophecy. I mean, you have so many time prophecies. Why is the camera zooming in on my forehead? It's big enough already. Okay. So, rather there are, but after 1844, the prophecies are in literal time, as a day for a year time ended in 1844. A great example is the millennium. There you go. That is in literal time, and it's after 1844. How do we know? Because Ellen White was given the rule of no more day after a year principle. That's what she meant in this quote. Yeah, and every single quote where she says there's no more time, sometimes she will not say prophetic time. Sometimes she will just say no more time. Oh, and by the way, when it says in Revelation 10, want to read Revelation 10 together? Is that something we want to do? I'm fired up today. I don't know why. Probably because this is important. Probably. Okay.
So you read, yeah.
And the angel which I saw stand upon the sea and upon the earth lifted up his hands to heaven, and sware by him that liveth forever and ever, who created heaven and things that therein are, and the earth and the things that therein are, and the sea and the things which are therein, that there should be that there should be time no longer. What time is this? I mean, obviously, it's not time as the concept of time, right? The sequential observation of the decay of matter in our three-dimensional space. It's not time per se. So what time? The Advent movement, the pioneers Ellen White, thought that this meant no more prophetic time. Do we think they were right? Well, let me give you a clue. It says, "And I took the little book out of the angel's hand and ate it up. And it was in my mouth sweet as honey. And as soon as I had eaten it, my belly was bitter. And he said unto me, Thou must prophesy again before many peoples and nations and tongues and kings." Question: has that already happened? Have we lived through that situation? Do we have history books where we read about kings and peoples and nations and tongues? And there was the great, whatever, fanatic, revival, whatever revisionist history must exist to be able to explain that verse. Did that happen? If something of this caliber ever happened, would that be taught in every single institution of learning? Okay, what's on par with a movement eating a book and then prophesying to all the nations of the world, all the kings of the earth? Let's find something. Okay, maybe we can't. All right, maybe we can't. But what's one of the greatest things that happened in our history? Well, God parted the Dead Sea once. The great exodus of Egypt, right? That was a big deal. Everybody knows about it. I mean, it's folklore. It's everybody knows about it, right? It's taught in all Sunday schools. It's the Jewish tradition. It's taught in Catholic schools. It's taught in Protestant schools. It's taught everywhere. And I believe that the Revelation 10, the ending there, is more grand. It's greater than that, right? There is a people eating some book and they prophesy, and there is a movement of prophets. None of that has already happened. It's still in the future. And so that verse in the middle of that chapter, proclaiming that there is no more time, enabled to reconcile that apparent contradiction, we would have to know exactly what kind of time we're talking about. We're not talking about prophetic time. The corporate church is wrong about that. We are not talking about the concept of time, right? Time is linear, and it will always be linear, although I think we will lose the sense of time in heaven because we will just live through the eons of eternity. The no more time, simply put, is exactly where we started. This is the right time. And at midnight, there was a cry made. Why is he crying? Why are his feet on the land and the sea? Well, he is proclaiming that the tarrying, the bridegroom that tarried, he tarried, right? We were disappointed in 1844. Nothing happened. There was no midnight cry. There was no cleansing of the sanctuary here on what we thought was the cleansing of the sanctuary. There was none of that. None of that happened. The book was bitter in our belly, right? And that's because, how do you spell? I'm dyslexic. So this is the key. This is the key to all of this. I will stand upon my watch and set me upon the tower, and I will watch to see what he will say unto me. You gotta watch. You gotta listen for the loud cry. You want to be a virgin with oil in your lamp. And what I shall answer when I'm reproved. And the Lord answered me and said, write the vision, write the seven thunders, and make it plain upon tables, charts, diagrams, movies, that he may run that readeth it. For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Oh, there is that term. There is that term, appointed time. What's that term? Why do we love that term? The Moad. Because that's That's the core of our movement. If the appointed time does not start in 2027, Seventh-day Adventism will be meaningless. There's no point to it because all the substance of this movement is embedded in the appointed time. I know those are big words, but mark my words. But we don't have to fear because the Lord will do nothing but reveal his secrets to his servants. But at the end, it shall speak. At the time of the end, the wise shall understand. Right? What shall the wise understand, beloved? What shall the wise understand? They shall understand the times of Daniel 12. That's when we are told that that's what the wise understand. And it happens to be the same adjective describing the virgins that have oil. They are the wise virgins. Isn't it so? So, but at the end it shall speak and not lie. Though it tarry, did the bridegroom tarry? Yes, he tarried. Wait for it. Wait for the 1335 days, the blessing, because it will surely come. It will not tarry. The appointed time will come. Okay, so this is I know it's very dramatic. I'm maybe overly passionate, but this is the conclusion and the culmination of the entire inheritance of this movement. We are to eat the book, and now is the time to fully digest the book. So there is no more bitterness in our bellies. We need to digest the book fully so that we don't have ulcers in our stomachs, right? I mean, that much bitterness is not good for any of us. And we should not be afraid because this time around, there will be no second great disappointment. You will hear the Father's voice proclaiming the day and the hour. I mean, what more do you want than the creator of the universe speaking to you directly, saying, hey, Eva, Taya, Melody, Roy, Constance, Alex. I mean, imagine the honor. But yeah, none of that is going to happen if you put all of that in the past. I mean, I think some of the virgins that had no oil, I think they will want some oil when it's too late. Oh, and by the way, the virgins, are they Babylon? Are they the apostate Protestants? No, this is the movement, the watching movement. Those are the watchers. The virgins, they're virgins, right? They are unspoiled. They haven't committed spiritual fornication. So yeah. Anyway, I am tired of hearing my own voice. Anybody wanna comment on any of this? What do you think? Is this too much to what do you think about this message?
Amen. I'm happy. I'm blessed listening to you. Jesus is soon coming, and much to think about what you were sharing. So, Melody, I throw the ball over to you.
It's a great study. I agree with it. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you. Thank you for inspiring me.
Oh, I was wondering if you could type in the link to your YouTube channel in the chat.
Sure. I'll be doing. I've actually already filmed the that episode on the Midnight Cry. It's probably going to be the only episode I'll ever do where the target audience is actually Seventh-day Adventist, because I typically want to have further reach, but this one is specifically to Seventh-day Adventists, right? Because it's for our movement. Does that, by the way, make any sense? That God gave us all the right ingredients, all the necessary prerequisites, everything we need to be able to recognize the shepherd's voice and to be able to have oil in our lamps, to use Matthew 25 language. So to say that there's going to be a time message is actually just a natural conclusion to that thinking process, right? Of course, there will be a test whether or not you want to be a part of that movement. Why wouldn't there be? There's going to be test of obedience for every single individual on this earth, right? And everybody will be tested on the Sabbath question, because everybody in the universe has to have an allegiance to something, right? And what better way to test your allegiance to the authority that you submit to than to check what law you subscribe to, correct? But the remnant church is described by two attributes, by two markings: those who keep the commandments of God and have the testimony of Jesus. So the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy. How do you test for the spirit of prophecy? What better way to test for the spirit of prophecy than to see whether you are one of these Adventists that is mocking the statue of Daniel in your church? Like, oh, not that statue. That's so boring. I mean, it's so awkward that we as a movement still, beat that same drum. Or you open your heart fully for the Lord to show you everything he has to show you, so that you have the map for the end times. We'll need the map, right? What is the meaning of Emmet in your YouTube name? Well, without going too deep into it, there are a couple of meanings embedded in the word Emmet. The word Emmet means truth. So the spirit of truth is a reference to those chapters in John where we are told that the Comforter will come and he will show us all things, and he will be with us to the end of the world. So the spirit of truth, or the spirit of Emmet, is a reference to the spirit of the Son crying, Abba, Father, in our hearts. So that is the core of the gospel. That is if you want to preach the gospel, the only correct way to preach that, because the gospel has been corrupted by the corrupt churches for thousands of years now. You've had counterfeit Christian churches for centuries, right? So the true gospel is to preach the Spirit of Christ animating your body, being his temple, being the temple of the Holy Spirit. And the Parakletos, the Comforter, being the one who can comfort you because he went through the experience you're experiencing, which is the experience of a human being being tempted in all ways. And the secondary meaning, which I don't have time to go into, is that the Hebrew tradition of that word Emmet is very rich. The way you spell Emmet in Hebrew is by using 3 letters of the Hebrew alphabet: Aleph, Tek, and Met and Tek, which is the first. It's the first letter, the middle of the alphabet letter, and the last letter of the Hebrew alphabet. And it is believed to be the shape and the form of the actual seal of God. So the Hebrew word emet is believed to be the seal of God. But there is more to it. Melody?
Yes, I'd like to read a quote from A Great Controversy that goes right along with what you've been saying. Here it is, this Great Controversy, the 88 version, page 313. With profound and reverent interest, the elders of Israel should have been studying the place, the time, the circumstances of the greatest event in the world's history, the coming of the Son of God to accomplish the redemption of man. All the people should have been watching and waiting that they might be among the first to welcome the world's Redeemer. Yes, the leaders of Israel did not know the time, but who did? The wise men from Babylon. There's a small group in Jerusalem, Ellen White tells us, that were studying Daniel's prophecies and knew the Messiah was about to be born, and the shepherds also. They were also studying the prophecies, but the leaders did not know. And that's because they weren't studying like they should have been. And elsewhere, Ellen White says that the conditions in God's church just before the second coming will be the same as at the first coming. Then she goes on further in Great Controversy, same next page. She says, "Oh, what a lesson is this wonderful story of Bethlehem, how it rebukes our unbelief, our pride, and self-sufficiency, how it warns us to beware lest by our criminal indifference we also fail to discern the signs of the times and therefore know not the day of our visitation." So she's saying we should study the timing of the second advent. And just like those small groups of people were studying the timing of the first advent. And so anyway, just thought everyone would like to know that goes right along with what you were saying today.
Yes. Yeah, so yeah, they wouldn't have crucified the King of Kings if they understood the 70 week of Daniel, right? Or maybe they would have. Maybe they would have. You know, maybe they knew exactly that maybe they were 100% sure that Christ was the Messiah. It says so in the Desire of Ages, right? When Caiaphas was accusing Christ, Jesus, one of the greatest temptations that he had in his life was that he was tempted to force the mouth of the high priest to say out loud the truth that he believed in his heart, which was that Christ was Messiah. Remember that chapter? So the high priest of Israel, the leader of the Jews in the time of Christ, knew that Christ was the Son of the only living God. So maybe knowing the times is not enough. Maybe you have to disintegrate. What I mean by that word is that you have to die to such a degree that whatever worldly substance there is left of you is completely dismantled and disintegrated. And what will be left is the new person that Christ will build from the pieces that he can form you from the bottom up. I believe that's necessary. You know, that in the book I dedicate a chapter to this, that the psychology of positive disintegration, which by the way is a method of therapy in psychology that a Polish psychiatrist used after World War II on some of the worst tortured people during World War II. he applied that method of positive disintegration to show them that to be completely disintegrated as a person, where there's nothing left, and you have to surrender to a higher power and let that higher power build you up again. I mean, it's way more complicated than that. There are stages, and there are, it's all there are some technical things about it, but as Christians, we know this to be, the most simple thing, which is that we have to be born again. And I don't think the high priest of Israel was born again. So, yeah. Lee, how do you pronounce that name?
Yes, it's Lee. Can you hear me?
Yeah. Hi, Lee.
Hi, thank you for your presentation. You brought out some very interesting and important points that I think that a lot of people don't stop and consider. I guess one of the comments that I was going to ask that leads to a question, and that is that and Jesus, when he was talking to the disciples, stated that the celestial events would be signs in the heavens that would preempt the events of the second coming. And it appears to me that there has to be a special blessing for the 1335. And the final and most compelling blessing, I think, would be the arrival of Jesus at the second coming that would complete the 1335. If that's the case, the concern that I have and the question that I have that I don't have a good answer for, and I don't know if you've thought about this, but events in the heavens that connect to end time events, because we know that Jesus told us to watch for those things. My concern is that if we push the date for events to take place after, say, 2027,
I'm losing connect.
be an error by pushing some. Wondering if we could be losing, we could be in an error and looking so far in advance and miss the opportunity of a second coming that would take sooner than that. I'm just concerned that by looking so far out, that if Jesus even cuts time short, what does that mean when he says he cuts time short? I mean, it makes sense that we have connecting events to 2027 that resemble the events of the baptism of John the Baptist in AD 27. And then we have, the death of Christ in AD 31, which would correspond to a 2,000-year time period that takes us to the death of Christ on the cross. But I'm just wondering, if these celestial events are told to us as warnings, what celestial events have you possibly even looked at, if you have at all, that would connect to the time period of 2031, rather than bringing it further forward to a sooner date than that?
That's a great question. Melody, do you want to answer that, or can I? I know your hand is up, but I do have an answer, but I do want to give you a chance to answer that first if you want to. Or
Well, he's referring to Matthew 24:22, it says, and except those days should be shortened, there should no flesh be saved, but for the elect's days, those days shall be shortened. And what they're talking about, the reason what is being shortened, the verse before that is talking about the Great Tribulation, and it's saying, I believe it's the martyrdom during the Great Tribulation that is shortened, because it says, but if you're unless those days are shortened, no one will be saved. In other words,
Right.
if the martyrdom is not shortened, they're going to literally kill everybody on this planet, especially the elect. And so the context itself is telling us that what's shortened is the martyrdom, and not that the 1335 days is shortened. So if the 1335 days were shortened, there'd be no purpose to God ever even throwing out that number. So that's what I believe is the martyrdom that's shortened, because the context says that unless it was shortened, the elect would not be saved; they would be killed. So
Yeah.
that's my.
Yeah, your answer is almost identical to mine. I would have pointed out that we have to study the seven thunders and see the bigger picture. And if you study the seven thunders, you will understand that it has it simplifies all of Revelation and Book of Daniel, because it gives you 7 milestones. It gives you a beginning, a middle, and an end of the end times. So you have the first thunder, the fourth thunder, and the seventh thunder are the beginning, the middle, and the end of the investigative judgment. So I call them in my book, I call them the thresholds of the entire proceeding, of the courtroom proceeding. But in the middle of those of the beginning, the middle, and the end, you've got 4 phases of the end time. And in my book, I call it the lion phase, the ox phase, the man phase, and the eagle phase, because each phase deals with completely different things. So the first phase, the lion phase, deals with allegiance. And it's basically that's where the Sabbath test begins. Does your allegiance lie with the creator of the universe, the creator of this world? Or does it lie with human tradition and ultimately the humans that joined the rebellion of the fallen angels? And then you have the ox phase, which is the executive phase before the probation closes. And the ox phase is basically the phase where you have the trumpets. And the trumpets, I mean, you were talking about celestial signs, right? If you want celestial signs, you want to look at trumpets. I mean, the heavens shake, the stars are falling in the trumpets, and the trumpets are not in the past; they're future. You know, so the architecture of the seven thunders does not allow you to put them in the past.
I'm concerned that, we keep pushing things off into the future, and not apply them to see if any of these things have actually happened already.
They have.
Yes, I believe. I believe your statement is correct, that it is future after their Adventist pioneers' understanding of 1844. But I think we also need to be careful to stop to say, well, when does the first trumpet actually start to happen? Does it happen now? Did it happen last year, or is it going to happen next year? But we need to be looking at these things in a contemporary application. And I think too many scholars continue that believe in a literal fulfillment of this to take place in the future, keep pushing things off. And I'm concerned that by doing that, we could fall into making a mistake and recognizing that some of these things are actually currently taking place or may have already taken place, and we should look at it in that light.
Yeah, but that's why we shouldn't be guessing anything. We need to have all the events.
Agreed.
We have to have all the events in their correct sequence. And in order to have a complete, it's like having a map, right? And you want to arrive at a far point, in a distant point on the map, right? But then some of the map is just completely burned. That map is useless, right? I mean, you're not going to be able to arrive at the destination. So you will have to know each and every lake and river and road and so on, every ridge, and so on. So the seven thunders is how you do that. The seven thunders is the architecture that God gave us for the end times. It wasn't given to the pioneers of this movement, and so they didn't have the full picture. But just to agree with you, just to be a bit agreeable here, you're completely right. Some of it is in the past because the application, the historical application, pointing to the antitypical future antitype, that pattern almost never breaks. So when you have the earthquake of Lisbon, and when you have the darkening of New England, and when you have the meteor shower of Alabama, and you have all of these celestial signs right before or right after 1844 and 1798, that is God being like, all right, let me be consistent with giving you a historical application that you can multiply by a billion, so you can at least try to imagine it. What will it actually be like when the complete fulfillment is here? And if you want a good description of that, read the trumpets, study the trumpets, study the seals. And besides, I mean, at the ending of of Revelation 6, you have a description of the firmament.
It's not working.
The firmament opening up like a scroll, and you have every single mountain moving out of its place, or being flattened, and you have every island moving out of its place. If those are not celestial signs, I don't know what is. And by the way, the vision that I've mentioned twice now during this study, that early writing starts with, I think in the second chapter, so right after, she receives another vision, and that vision is of the celestial signs at the end times. And if you take just like word for word, if you look at the context of those celestial signs, those are not the application. That's the fulfillment. That's the antitypical fulfillment of those prophecies. So so that's all still in the future. But again, let me just summarize my whole position by saying we are not allowed to speculate. This movement cannot be built on speculation. So let me just quote Melody from her message 44 minutes ago. There's just too much evidence. All that evidence that we have, we need that evidence because billions of fingers will point at us and accusing us. So when we will stand in front of kings and the aristocracy and the judges and the lawyers, the accusers, when the accuser will be in the midst of humanity and shouting in the crowds, just like they did, right, when Jesus was being accused, because we will drink from his cup, correct? We will have his baptism, right? That's the whole point of his ministry. He shows us how our 42 months will be, correct? Right? So we will go through his experience. And Satan was in the crowds screaming, crucify him, screaming, Barabbas. We want Barabbas, not Jesus. So when they will point at you and they will scream, crucify him, we don't want Alex, we don't want Melody, we want the counterfeit. We want the transcendental ascended master new age religion and all of that nonsense that's coming our way. We will have to be able to present our evidence in a way where even Caesar will start reconsidering his life and thinking, what have I done? Is there an authority greater than I? Right? So we'll have to be able to present our evidence just like Paul did in front of Nero. So even the despicable humans with no conscience whatsoever, even they will for a moment, truly reconsider their position, because the evidence will be so great and will be and it will stand. The truth will have its day.
Yeah, thank you for your answer. And again, thank you for your presentation.
Yeah, there will be plenty of celestial signs. Melody?
Yes, my husband just came in. He'd like to say something.
I've just come in on part of this, and I heard the question about what is going to be cut short, the timing. And I think that Melody's right on, that it is going to be the martyrdom that's going to be cut short. But I think there's another thing. We believe that God has given this sin problem a 6,000 year time frame. It is saying, okay, you can suffer for the 6,000 years. It's just like the 6 days of creation that he worked. And then on the seventh,
Yeah, we covered it.
We had the rest. You covered that. So the 6,000 years of probation is what I believe can also be cut short, because in our studies, and it's too long to give the proof here, but we have a couple of places that people can go to look to see the proof. We believe that the 6,000 years ends are actually the 2,000 years from Jesus began at Passover with his death. And so 2,000 years later ends at Passover in 2031. If he died in AD 31, then 2,000 years past that would be 2031. Well, we know that Jesus comes at tabernacles. The Bible clearly shows that. So does Ellen White in Patriarchs and Prophets. And so we know that sin cannot continue into the seventh millennium. Otherwise, it's going into the Sabbath. So if the sixth millennium ends at 2031, the close of probation, the 6,000 years of probation ends then Jesus cannot come at tabernacles of 2031, because that would be allowing another 6 months of sin into the Sabbath millennium. So then it has to be cut short, so that the latest that he would come would end up being tabernacles of 2030. So that would be cutting the 6,000 years of probation time short.
Cutting it short by 6 months.
Cutting it short by 6 months. And so we
How do
think
we
that
know
that's
it's 6
also
months?
another application. Well, because there's 6 months between Passover and tabernacles.
Of course.
So you either go in the same year, which puts it 6 months later than 6,000 years of closing probation, which you can't do. Otherwise, it's no longer 6,000 years. We're into the Sabbath year, Sabbath millennium. So then it has to be cut short by 6 months, which puts you back at tabernacles of 2030. And that's where we think that also time is cut short.
Yes, it's Patriarchs and Prophets, I believe, page 541, where she says that Jesus, the second coming, is at tabernacles. Well, technically, she says the wicked will all be destroyed at tabernacles, and they're destroyed at the second coming. So we definitely know the second coming occurs at the Feast of Tabernacles. You can prove it from the Bible alone as well. So it has to, the 6,000 years has to be cut short by 6 months at least.
She also says that Jesus came after 4,000 years of sin. So 4,000 years plus 2,000 years is 6,000 years, which is the total probationary period.
Also, I've heard this argument before that if the war of Gog and Magog after the 1,000 years are to take place, which they are, because that's the point of the prophecy of Gog and Magog, Ezekiel 37, then that would technically be an issue of sin, right? That war will take place because sin took place on earth and is being resolved after the 1,000 years. So you would have to have, if you want to be, if God is meticulous about his numbers, then then that war of Gog and Magog, you would have to take that out of the 6,000 years, wouldn't you? Do you know what do you know my
No,
meanings?
because there's no probation after the seventh millennium. Everything's decided by then. The 6,000 years is the 6,000 years of probation.
Oh, okay.
For
So
man.
not time,
It's
not
improper.
time, not time in general, just time for the for the resolution of the court of the case.
Yes. Then
Okay.
then the other ends up being the judgment of what's happening. So it's the application that happens afterwards. But the probationary period is the 6,000 years that ends at the second coming.
So if you have the Feast of Tabernacles in 2030, do you then subtract 42 months from that?
Yes, which ends up putting you in 2027,
The spring.
the spring of 2027, for all of this time frame to kick off.
Yeah, which, and if I may continue the arithmetic, if you want a midnight cry 6 months before that, because the historical midnight cry was 6 months before the date that we could calculate, right?
Well, that would put you probably into the fall of
this fall.
this year.
That'd be
Exactly.
this fall at Tabernacles.
Exactly. It would be this November, right? Around
So
November.
we don't have long to wait to find out if we are correct or if we're not correct.
The way I see it, and I said this before you came, but the way I see it, we have the rest of this year. I mean, 2026 is the year where the Sabbath keepers will have to agree on these three issues that I've presented this evening. We'll have to agree on Daniel 12, right? We'll have to agree on the eschatological, the main premise of eschatology, that we have this time of trouble, right? And that there is a structure to it. We'll have to agree on the fundamental accusation of Satan, which is that he questions the sonship of Christ, right? He questions, he attacks the Father and the legitimacy of his throne by attacking his Son, which is this is what you do as a strategic mastermind. You don't attack, you don't attack what sustains the universe. You attack his inheritor. You attack the majesty of heaven. That actually militarily it makes so much sense when you look at that. When I did my Great Controversy episode, it just came out a month ago. I was making that argument, but anyway, that's the second truth that our movement will have to agree upon, and then the third truth is what was the third truth that I said during this lecture? That once the time test will unify us, the one true God truth will unify us, and only then can we go as a united party, as a united movement, and receive the latter rain. And then can we call anybody who hears, then we can call them out of Babylon. I don't see the Sunday law being the next Yeah, the third thing was basically the second seal. The second seal is a big deal because we have to recognize that the seals are associated with the investigative judgment. I don't think it's a coincidence that John Andrews, when he was asked late in his life, and he was the best Bible student they had in the pioneer movement, right? He was the brightest of them all, and when he was asked late in his life, what is the most concerned, like what is the issue that we should be the most concerned about, right? His answer was, we should all understand the heavenly sanctuary and the investigative judgment much more thoroughly. And I have found out that that is the greatest issue of all of it, right? That what all of this is about is to present to the universe the antitypical Elijahs, the antitypical Jobs, right? We will have to lose everything so that we can gain everything. That's my belief.
I was going to, I just wanted to add something in here. In Revelation, I think this is Revelation 14, under the three angels' messages. The whole theme of the three angels' messages is about worship and loyalty. And who we worship is answered by the one true God movement. We need to understand who we are worshiping. Who is Jesus? Just like you've been saying. The second thing is, when do we worship? And that is answered by the Sabbath, and also by all of the other days that God says, these are my holy days, and I want you to worship them. And those are throughout the year. So and that's in Leviticus chapter 23. And so we believe that the two biggest things about loyalty and worship is who we worship and when we worship. And Satan has set up his counterfeit for who we worship, and he has set up his counterfeit for when we worship. And he's got, instead of Sabbath, he's got Sunday. Instead of Passover, he's got Easter. Instead of tabernacles, he's got Christmas. He's got all kinds of things that he has set up in opposition. Well, he doesn't do anything in opposition unless there is something that God has set up that is important. And so, again, we come back to both of these issues of who we worship and when we worship are the two keys that we believe that God's true people will all come together on here at the very end time. And that's the heart of the message of the three angels' messages.
No, I agree, but I was my scope for the criteria was not that big, because you're talking universally, right? Universally, it has to be acknowledged that who God is, and his calendar, his times, his laws, right?
Right.
I was being a bit more specific. I was contextualizing it to what I see has to happen during the midnight cry, which I believe will happen before whatever happens in 2027, right? So I believe I'm very, very specific. Actually, I'm doing what I'm usually terrible at. I'm typically, associating all kinds of things and just being super vague, and everything is in the air. I'm doing the quite opposite right now. I'm saying very specifically that this movement, this Sabbath keeping movement, has to agree very specifically on we need to synchronize our spirit of prophecy, and we do that by agreeing on the on Daniel 12, the one true God doctrine, And of course, I mean, the Sabbath, we all agree about that. So the reason why I omitted that one is because it's a given. We are all Sabbath keepers, right? We can meet with Conrad Vine, we can meet with Walter Fide, we can all observe the Sabbath together as of right now, right? What we cannot do right now, agree who do we worship, right? And what are the events scheduled on God's calendar? And
But
I
we don't all agree on God's calendar. That's the point. Many of the one true God people do not believe in God's calendar.
right, and I think that's one of the things that we'll have to sort out during the midnight cry. We'll have a few months, and I am looking very much forward to how God will do it. I cannot tell you how interested I am in the way God will do this. I mean, on a mechanical level, how?
Yes.
Will
Yes.
one of us just prophesy? Will one of us just fall into a vision and start prophesying on one of these Zoom meetings? What will how will God teleport you around to tell us that you've been given the right message? I want to know. I don't know about you, but I want to know, how will this Godhead movement, like a you know, in music you have like a fork where you have you make it resonate to a certain frequency.
440.
Yeah. How
Hey,
how do we synchronize our resonance like this musical fork? How does that happen? All I know for certain is that God will do it in a matter of months.
very
Why?
soon.
Because that's what the math says, right?
Yes.
The math points to 2027, and the historical midnight cry says 6 months before that. So our midnight cry will be 6 months before that.
Here's something we've been tossing around. We don't know until it happens, of course. But Ellen White tells us that things will begin with an overwhelming surprise, even to God's people. It'll be an overwhelming surprise to everybody. And so we thought, what is going to happen that's an overwhelming surprise that's going to kick things off? But what you're saying today, I began to wonder if the overwhelming surprise, like you said, begins 6 months before the time of trouble begins. Because I think the overwhelming surprise brings on the Sunday law. So some overwhelming surprise happens, and there's some people that dispute this vision of Ellen White's, but it's out there on the internet. It's called her train station vision. She never wrote it down, but 4 people heard her say it, and one of them wrote it down, and another person corroborated that what the person wrote down was what they heard too. And the train station vision, she said she saw some event happen that knocked everybody, all of God's people down, all of them. They're all flattened for a short period of time. And then she saw them one by one get up. They formed a new company together. They regrouped. And by the inspiration of the Holy Spirit, they picked completely new leaders, and they went on and they finished the work. And so she said, at that time, all petty differences will be dropped. They will all be united. So whatever this overwhelming surprise is, I think is what unites them. That's our guess based on what we studied.
My guess on what that surprise will be, I think, well, I'm convinced that it will be the announcement by the United States government that we are not alone in the universe. And the interpretation, the paradigm shift of that message. And I don't think it will happen the way it's happening right now, where Trump and Obama says it quite casually nowadays in interviews. Yes, we are not alone. And yes, we have non-human intelligent bodies in our military facilities. Yes, everybody knows that, right? That's not an overwhelming surprise. What will be an overwhelming surprise will be the interaction with the non-human intelligence. And if you can hold on for 1 second. In this book is the 4th volume of the Spirit of Prophecy. It's the unadulterated version. It's the oldest version. So you have to get the oldest copy. Michael McCaffrey gave me this as a gift. He prints them and sells them on his website. It's a beautiful copy. In that oldest version, it says that spiritualism will take a modern form, and the institutions of the world will be the ones propagating and perpetuating spiritualism in the end time deception. How is that possible? How can we conceive of something like that? That, to me, that happens only if you marry science together with religion, and that has been going on already for many years. If you truly understand the running currents of the Counter-Reformation, it has been going on for a while now. And I also believe, and I've been saying this many times, that the true creation account, as we read it in Genesis 1, will come to the forefront of this movement. Remember when she writes in early writings that we will be able to preach the Sabbath more fully at the end of time? To preach the Sabbath more fully, how do you do that? You do it when the issue of the Sabbath becomes more relevant than ever. Why does it become relevant? It becomes relevant because the creation myth or the creation narrative and will be questioned, will come into question. That in of itself would be at the center of the end time issue. And why would that even be an issue? Well, Roger Monroe, if anybody knows who that is, he used to be a
Morneau.
Yeah, Morneau.
Morneau.
From Canada, yeah. A French Canadian. He said the end time deception will be when Satan and his demons come to the kings of the earth and say they are extraterrestrials from distant galaxies. Right? And we have been programmed like never before that is about to happen. I mean, Steven Spielberg just came out with his movie about the age of disclosure being upon us now, right? And in every single interview when he's interviewed about the movie, he's just saying completely directly, yeah, this is just me using the format of cinema to tell you it's happening now. This will happen now, he says. So I have no doubt in my mind that this will be the great surprise. And if you don't have the right understanding of biblical cosmology, if you don't have the right understanding of biblical ontology and biblical teleology, if you cannot philosophically, and you don't need to use philosophical terms, but you have to use your own language to be able to describe what is human consciousness. Why is it not what they say it is? Because the New World religion will be built upon the new understanding of human consciousness, right? And what is Earth? What is this world? What is Earth? Why is it so relevant? And why are these extraterrestrials here proclaiming the things they're proclaiming? I have no doubt in my mind that's the big surprise that's going to happen any moment now.
So
I have
I think this has to be the closing verse. It's getting late in Norway, and we have kept on for 2.5 hours. So maybe you can like to have the closing prayer.
Eva, could I just read one quick quote here? It's page 686, and I was stunned when I came across this. And it's all in one paragraph. It says modern, and this is when Ellen White is talking about Saul going to the Witch of Endor. She says, modern spiritualism, resting upon the same foundation, is but a revival in a new form of the witchcraft and demon worship that God condemned and prohibited of old. So modern spiritualism is witchcraft and demon worship. And then she goes on down to say, and I'll skip down a little bit, it says, Peter, describing the dangers to which the church was to be exposed in the last days, says that as there were false prophets who led Israel into sin, so there will be false teachers who privily shall bring in damnable heresies, even denying the Lord that bought them. And many shall follow their pernicious ways. That's 2 Peter 2:1-2. Then here it is. Here, the apostle has pointed out one of the marked characteristics of spiritualist teachers. They refuse to acknowledge Christ as the Son of God. And then concerning such teachers, the beloved John declares, who is a liar but he that denieth that Jesus is the Christ? He is the Antichrist that denieth the Father and the Son. Whosoever denieth the Son, the same hath not the Father. 1 John 2:22-23. Spiritualism, by denying Christ, denies both the Father and the Son, and the Bible pronounces it the manifestation of Antichrist. So if you deny that Jesus is not the Son of God, but he's just playing a role, this is exactly what she is calling one of the marked characteristics of spiritualist teachers, which is a form of witchcraft and demon worship that God condemned. I don't know if you've seen that quote, but I just really hit me when I read that. That was Patriarchs and Prophets, page 686.
Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. Okay, you wanted me to close?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Father, we thank you for your blessings. We thank you for the wonderful things that you are bringing out here in these last days. I ask that you will continue to bless Alex with his studies, and Eva with her ministry, and with ours as well. Please bless us. Continue to give us new light. Help us to be willing to accept it when we do see it. So please bless us now. I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.